Most startup founders never even get their business to profitability, let alone an exit, an acquisition, or an IPO. But I started my sports data company called OddsJam. It was bootstrapped. We only started with a little bit of money, no investors. And within 3.5 years, we grew that business so fast that our company, OddsJam, ended up getting acquired for $160 million by a public company. So the point of this video is to explain how to go from not even having an idea to an exit in your startup. The full playbook, the best advice I have, no fluff. There's not going to be anything crazy in this video. Just my true honest analysis of once you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to start a startup, how do you actually make that happen and end up getting acquired? So let's start out with step one, which is the idea phase. Everybody has different life experiences, work experiences. So in my case, I was a quantitative trader. I was working at a company called Susquehanna in sports betting legalized in the United States. There's of course timing, that's important in a startup, but I started to bet on sports a lot. A ton of sports books were launching in the United States like FanDuel, BetMGM, Fanatics. And what I started to think about is there's really no software out there. I'm placing a lot of bets, but I'm finding all my bets manually. There really wasn't a good software to compare lines across all the major sports books and to find line discrepancies, but I still didn't know if this was a good idea for a company. I didn't know if I was the only person who was this obsessed with sports betting and the data and the math behind sports betting. I thought I may have just been the only person. So what I started to do is I just started to research, and I noticed there were Reddit threads of people who are asking the same question. Hey, is there any website that aggregates all the odds from these new sports books launching in the US and points out which books are offering the best prices, or when books have line discrepancies? Maybe you can get LeBron James over 26.5 points on FanDuel and his line on DraftKings is 32.5. I saw that there were other people asking for this, and that was kind of when I had, I guess, my light bulb moment in the shower. Maybe there are other data-driven sports bettors, pretty smart people who care about the math, they care about the data, finding value in the market, and maybe it's a good idea to try to build a Bloomberg terminal for sports betting. Every single day I went into work, I was an options trader. I was on a Bloomberg terminal all day long, looking at data, crunching numbers to make the best possible trades. And I wanted that personally. So this was a problem I had in my own life. I wanted a Bloomberg terminal for my own bets. So when I got home from work and I wanted to look for bets, everything would just be easy. Line discrepancies would be pointed out. I would have a simple website where I could see which of the books in Pennsylvania, where I was living at the time, which of the books was offering the best price, the best line. So once I started to research and see, okay, there's other people on Reddit, there's other people on, Quora who are wondering about this as well, I started to get into building mode. So one thing I want to be really clear about is I didn't go quit my job, raise $10 million to start this company. I wanted to be scrappy. I wanted to do this in a cheap way. So I quit my job, and me and my co-founder, we both put in a little over $10,000 to get an initial data source, initial servers, to get the website up. At first, we only had a couple sports books, right? Our site was not very good. We were not updating the odds very quickly. It was nothing close to what OddsJam is today, with hundreds of sports books and odds updating every single second. We weren't there, but again, you want to make sure you're actually solving a problem for people and you're building something that people are actually going to pay for. So at first, we spent the least amount of money possible, which again was a little over $10,000 each, to get an initial product off the ground with just the main sports books, FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, pointing out line discrepancies, showing odds. And then right from the get-go, we started to talk to customers. Who wants to buy this? We started to write Reddit threads. Who's interested in this product? And we started getting some sales. So we wanted feedback from the market, and this is really important. As a startup founder, you can be in your head all you want and say, people are gonna buy this, people are gonna buy this, people are gonna buy this, but you don't wanna go raise a ton of money, spend a year building a product, and then once it's actually ready to go and you've spent millions of dollars building that product, you release it and nobody buys it. So we wanted to stay scrappy, which you'll notice is a common theme in a bunch of very successful startups. Dropbox, initially, Drew Houston knew it's probably going to take a lot of money and a lot of time to build what Dropbox ultimately became. So all he did was he made a video showing if he built Dropbox, what the software would do. He released that video, and once he saw his waitlist explode to tens of thousands of people who were interested in getting Dropbox, he realized, wow, there's actually customer demand for this product. I should go build it. And then he started to pour time and money into building what ultimately became Dropbox. And it's kind of the same thing with OddsJam. We didn't want to spend millions of dollars to add every sportsbook to our website initially if customers weren't going to pay for it. So we were very scrappy. We built a very cheap, rudimentary version of our sports betting software, and we started to sell it. And once customers started coming in the door and saying, yo, this is pretty sick. We want this, but you got to add more sports books if you want me to pay more money. We started to then invest, right? We had some initial money coming in the door from our initial customers. So we started to invest capital to add more sports books, more markets, to improve the speeds, the odd refresh speeds, as opposed to every single line on OddsJam updating in 10 seconds, we started to get it updating every second. So as customers started to come in and we saw what we were doing was working, then we invested into building out a more perfect product with more sports books, more tools, more features. So you want to be scrappy. So long story short, every startup, you need to start in the idea phase. Obviously, there's two things that are important. One is you're solving an actual customer need. Is this something people actually want? There's a lot of founders who think they know what people want, and then they build something that nobody actually wants, or they're not willing to pay for. What are people complaining about? What do you want in your life personally? And of course, it's important to like what you're working on. For me, I love gambling. So on top of solving a real problem, I wanted this Bloomberg terminal of sports betting for myself. I knew I love gambling. If I'm working on sports betting, I will be a happy person. I will be able to put in hundreds of hours. I will be able to work extra hard every single night because this is something I actually genuinely enjoy. And then once you have an idea, you want to build it in the cheapest way possible. And sometimes that means you don't even have to build the product. As Drew Houston did, you can just record a video of, hey, here's what the product would look like. And then you can see how many people are interested in it. You can start sending it around in communities and see how many people join the wait list. And then you can interview those people. How much would you be willing to pay for this? And that will give you a sense of, is there customer demand? You don't even necessarily need to build the thing before you start trying to sell it, or at least getting a wait list and getting a sense of what would people pay. Ultimately, as an entrepreneur, you are solving problems for customers. You're building something that they want to pay for. So it's critical to just talk to customers as much as possible. So when we initially launched OddsJam, I was talking to every single customer via customer support chats, and I was asking them, what should we improve? What sportsbook do you want to see us add next? We want to make the perfect product for you. But let's get on to kind of the next step of scaling your company from the initial idea phase to an acquisition or an IPO. So from the time where OddsJam only had a few sports books, was really slow, was crashing all the time, we had paying customers. We knew that we were onto something. So as we started to grow, word got out, there's a new product that kind of shows you all the sportsbook odds, points out line discrepancies. We were getting some new customers every single day, but we were rapidly improving the product. We were adding in new sports books. We were investing all the money that we were making into making a better product. But at some point, we started to notice there's really not that many more customers coming in now, as opposed to when we initially launched and first got out the word of what we were doing. there's not a ton of new customers coming in every single day. So we started to realize we had a marketing problem. If we built the best product in the world, we still wouldn't have many customers because not many people even knew who we were. So from the early days, we started to take distribution and marketing very important, and every founder needs to do this. A lot of times both founders are technical. Was the case for me and my co-founder. We both studied engineering and math and computer science. That was me. So a lot of people look down on marketing like, oh, marketing, those people are so stupid. They're not engineers. That is completely wrong. Marketing is the hardest thing possible in a business, is figuring out how to get your product in the hands of people who may be interested in buying it. It's very difficult. A lot of founders think they can just build something in isolation and then click a button for paid ads and they're gonna make millions of dollars. That's not how it works. Marketing is very challenging. Ads can be extremely expensive and may not be positive ROI for your business. So from the early days, it's really important to spend at least as much time thinking about distribution and marketing compared to building the product, engineering, stuff like that. So at OddsJam, we started to try out different marketing channels. Some worked, some didn't work. We tried out SEO, paid ads. We tried out a bunch of different channels for trying to acquire customers. And again, you're not gonna strike gold on all of them, but you don't need to. What we noticed is organic content. Initially, we were paying influencers to promote the product, right? Other sports betting people who had YouTube channels, we were going to them and saying, hey, we'd like to pay you. We have this really new cool product. Maybe check it out. If you like it, if you think it's cool, maybe we can pay you to do a YouTube video on how this product works. We were doing that with people on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and we had mixed success. But we started to notice that we were having some success, and that was better than having the same amount of customers or a very slight growth rate. So what we started to realize is organic content, even though we're paying people to do it, is very valuable. So I ultimately got pushed into doing YouTube videos about how I use OddsJam. I'm a huge gambler. I'm a former quantitative trader. I use my own product. So it was super easy for me once I got used to it. I'd never done a YouTube video. I never really used social media before I started my business. But once I realized I could just click a button on the camera and start placing bets, and that was gonna make OddsJam a lot more money, I started to do content more and more consistently. I started tweeting out bets that I liked and breaking them down. I started making YouTube videos on how I was finding my bets and why I thought certain bets were profitable. And that's when we really started to grow, is when we started to crack organic content. If you want to try out influencer marketing, you don't just want to pay one influencer $10,000, and if it doesn't work, call it a day. Because that doesn't mean influencers don't work. It means the influencer you picked sucked. You want a bigger sample size. So maybe try spending $20,000 on influencers, give $500 to 40 different YouTube creators to do videos about your product, see what comes back. Some maybe convert well, and then you can pay those people again. And then the people who don't drive any results, you can just cut after paying them the first $500. So you can do that for YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, live streaming platforms like Twitch and Kick. So I recommend testing out all of these channels, giving it a real test, a diversified sample, right? If you want to try out paid ads, don't just try one ad on Facebook, try out a bunch of variations, a bunch of different ads people. It is absolutely critical to focus on distribution and marketing from the early days. We're at step 4 now. Step number 4 is actually scaling the company. You only have 24 hours in a day as a founder. You need to be able to hire talent. You need to be able to get good people in the door. So at OddsJam, because I was creating a ton of content, I saw a ton of users engaging with my posts. I was spending hours a day on customer support. I realized I need to hire somebody. So I went to all of our users who were constantly bombarding me, asking for new sports books. I found our most passionate one and I offered him a job in customer support. I said, you clearly love sports betting. What do you do full-time for work? Because I'd love to pay you to take customer support off my hands. And that ended up being our first employee. So as a founder, it's critical that you actually build out the team, you find people to help you out, because you always want to be focused on the highest leverage thing as the founder of a company. If you're running a company making $50 million in profit every single year and you're trying to do customer support and manual data entry, you are not running your business optimally. That's probably not even possible. You need to be able to scale yourself as an entrepreneur. That is step 4 to building a great company. So one thing I want to be really clear about is you probably have noticed I haven't said we spoke to a bunch of venture capitalists or we tried to sell the company. No, we were heads down. For basically the entire time running the business, I ignored every email from a venture capitalist who wanted to put money into Odds Jam. We were solely focused on one thing, which was building the best possible Bloomberg terminal for sports betting and marketing it as good as possible to get as high of a revenue and profit margin as we could get. We were just trying to run a good business and we were super focused. So the final thing is, as the company was scaling, every decision was made in terms of expected value. So when I was a quantitative trader at Susquehanna, every single trade, we are thinking about what is the true price for this asset. If it's worth $10, I want to buy it at $9.50. What's the probability? What's the risk associated? Everything was in terms of expected value. And it's the same thing as a startup founder. Every new feature we built, every product improvement, every new plan we launched, we were thinking quantitatively. What do we think the probability of success is? What's the TAM of this product? How much money could we make? We were constantly trying to think in terms of EV to build the best possible products, add the best new features that were going to maximize revenue. And very similarly, everything was ruthlessly A/B tested. There was no just going with the gut. Everything was about the numbers, the data. We A/B tested pricing. What price point is optimal for our users? Is it $100? Is it $500 a month? What price point is optimal? But you want to be smart. When we started the company and had 10 users, we're not going to spend time A/B testing what price point is optimal. However, when you have thousands of people hitting your website every single day, it's important to try to optimize the home page. It's important to try to optimize your pricing to maximize revenue, maximize conversions. Should you have a free trial or should you not have a free trial? All of these things are important to test and think about in a quantitative way. That's how we grew the business, staying focused, heads down, thinking quantitatively, until ultimately found the right partner and sold the business. It's really that simple. Identify a problem, build something in a scrappy way, get it out to users if the market likes it, focus on distribution, and just continue to build a great business. So that is literally the playbook from starting with no money to ultimately selling your business for a large sum of money. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Obviously, every business takes a different path. I'm just sharing my own personal perspective on how to run a startup. And if I decide to start another company, this is exactly how I'm gonna think about it. And obviously my first one worked out pretty well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And again, thank you guys so much for your time.